Am I the a-hole for telling my sister she's the reason I'll never adopt? I, 30 female, have 3 bio siblings, 37 male, 36 male, and 33 female, and an adoptive sister, 31 female. My sister, who I will call Becky's bio mom, is my mom's cousin. The story of Becky getting adopted by my parents was basically her bio parents were addicts that just came one day out of the blue for a visit, then abandoned her at our house. She was 5 weeks old. For a few weeks, they tried to get my cousin's family to take her, but those a-holes didn't want the shame of a baby with medical issues that was born out of wedlock. My parents fell in love with Becky, and the rest was history. Thankfully, all Becky really needed was love and a good home. She beat a lot of odds and leads a healthy, successful life. My parents never hid the fact Becky was adopted. She's biracial, and we all learned about her heritage growing up. Everything was perfect until her parents reached out when she was 22. They were clean and wanted a relationship. In the space of a few months, she became a different person. It was like she hated us for taking her away from her bio parents. And as soon as she finished college and got the 20,000 euro check my parents gifted her, it's a startup we all got. She ghosted us and sent a letter to my parents telling them that if they ever try to contact her again, she will file a restraining order. She got married, and none of us even knew. Her mother passed away when she was 26, which led her father to relapse that unfortunately died 8 months later. After that, Becky reached out. My parents welcomed her back with open arms, but I still can't. Which leads to now. Me and my husband recently had a baby via IVF after 6 years trying. 5 natural. I brought my son to meet the family tonight, and after dinner all of us girls were in the living room. I brought up how he was worth everything, explaining my struggles, and that I'm gonna start naturally trying soon so he will have a sibling. Becky made a comment about why we didn't look into adoption since the world was already overpopulated, and I told her, honestly, we thought about it, but after all the crap you pulled, I'm afraid you're the reason I will never adopt. Becky yelled at me to get over it already, then left. And my mother said I shouldn't have spoken to her like that, so in the end I ended up leaving early too. My siblings are on my side, but my parents are extremely mad. Now for the top comments. Not stay home, because if her bio parents were still alive, she wouldn't even be around y'all right now. Becky straight up acted like an adversary by threatening a restraining order. It's always sad to hear when adopted children raised in loving households choose their birth parents over the ones who raised them. Becky also asked a question she shouldn't have if she wasn't prepared to hear the answer. She knew she caused a great deal of pain and anger. It doesn't take a genius to figure out why Opie prefers not to adopt. I'm sure it was hard to hear. It's quite possible she struggled with being adopted, especially considering she's biracial. But she chose to turn her back on her family, cut them out of her life entirely. It only came back because she lost her birth family. So Becky's using her family as backups and is upset that Opie has a problem with that? Tough. Becky needs to own up to what she did, make amends, and get into therapy. Opie might find some benefit in therapy as well. Not stay home. I hate adopted kids that turn on their parents who love them and raise them as soon as they find out their real parents want a relationship. She deserves it, honestly. Bio parents. The real parents are the people who raised them. I was adopted, and my mom referred to the woman who gave birth to me as my genetic mother. I love that term, as it is so much better than birth or bio parents. Not stay home. Did she ever apologize at least for what she did? To my parents? I honestly don't know. I was so hurt and angry because we were extremely close growing up. And with everything going on in my own life, I went low contact for a few weeks while everything was going on. But she did apologize to me about not inviting me to her wedding when she was drunk for my brother's birthday. Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for calling my husband a bad father because he allows his adult daughter's birthday to overshadow Christmas every year? When I met my husband, James, he had a 14-year-old daughter, Ella. Ella and I never really bonded, as she doesn't really like people. James always told me to leave Ella alone and respect her boundaries. I do believe he took her boundaries too far in some cases, as Ella is now a 27-year-old woman who refuses to speak when she doesn't want to. I have a 13-year-old daughter, Ava. Their pregnancy was a surprise, and I know the timing is bad, that I got pregnant right around the time I met Ella. And honestly, I have always felt that James prefers Ella. Ella is a lot like him personality-wise, and it is very subtle. But I feel like he loves Ella more. Ella never accepted her sister or I, but I've made peace with that, because getting Ella to speak is literally like pulling teeth. Ava hates Ella, but she knows that she has to be civil to everyone. Ella's birthday is December 23rd, and as a result, James never made too big of a deal about Christmas. Her birthday always took priority. This became an issue when Ava was born. James had always promised Ella he would take her to Europe to her 16th birthday, and Ella was insistent it had to be on her actual birthday. So to Christmas when Ava was 2, he actually missed Christmas, and we had a first fight of our entire marriage. He also told Ella crazy things like if a man doesn't make a big deal out of her birthday, to dump his ass, and that her birthday is much more important than Christmas. As a result, Ava complains every year that James cares more about Ella's birthday than about Christmas, and that she thinks Ella gets an unfair amount of money spent on her. Her birthdays are usually expensive, and 2 years ago she had a December wedding which James fully paid for. Even that Christmas, he refused to not do something elaborate for her birthday, and couldn't understand why Ava was annoyed. Also, Ella hosts a huge Christmas Eve which we're all invited to, but Ava and I didn't go, due to it mostly being her husband's family, so everything in December sometimes feel it is about Ella. This year, I feel bad, because I couldn't get Ava what she really wanted because it is out of stock. But Ella just had a baby and my husband bought her a ring with a baby's birthstone, which Ava knows about. Now Ella wants to go to Colorado for her birthday/Christmas Eve. James said he is going to go, because he can drive back and be home by about 10. I finally got annoyed and asked if he thinks he spent a fair amount of money/time/energy on Ella versus Ava, and I said it makes every Christmas about Ella and her birthday. He said I was being unfair because Ella has never excluded me from her plans, though she's rude and doesn't talk to me either. Finally, I snapped at him that he is a bad father, because one of his kids is a grown woman and one is not. He is now upset and says that was mean to say, and I just don't like Ella and he tries his best. I'm seeing a lot here that actually supports your husband's side. You really just don't like Ella, and you resent the energy that it puts into celebrating her birthday. I'm not seeing where it necessarily has to take away from Ava. Does he also make a big deal for Ava's birthday? This is missing from the post. Your husband bought a ring to celebrate Ella's child. That's nice. And it has nothing to do with the fact that you couldn't get Ava what she wanted for Christmas because it was out of stock. Trying to force your husband to ignore or downplay his daughter's birthday because it's 2 days before Christmas, and you seem to want him to entirely focus on his daughter with you isn't a good look. It really doesn't seem like he's neglecting Ava here from what you've written. You're the a-hole, sorry. Honestly, I'm leaning towards this too. Especially since Opie has yet to answer a single question about what he does for Ava. Maybe because she wouldn't admit he goes above and beyond for her too, and drops everything else to make sure she has a magical birthday? In fact, Opie only tells us what he does for Ella for Christmas. I see nothing what he does for Ava, so I can't tell if she is getting the same Christmas treatment as Ella. Because treating Ella for her birthday is not the same as treating her for Christmas. The only way to judge this is to know how he handles birthdays for both girls, and Christmas for both girls. It sounds to me like he doesn't do a lot for Christmas for either of them. He spends a lot of money on Ava, but it isn't personal. He tells me to plan/buy everything because he doesn't know what she wants. I know a lot of men do that, but he managed to know everything about Ella. You are accusing him of favoring one child over another, but it's clear that you've never liked your stepdaughter. He has 2 children. I have 1. Ella would have lost her mind if I ever tried to pretend she was my daughter, so I respect her boundaries, but he has 2 actual biological children. FYI people, Opie hid in the comments that husband was a single father to Ella, due to what I can only assume to be an abusive biomom. Ella testified against her mother as a kid, and had to get a restraining order. No bloody wonder they're so close. He is her mom and dad. I don't even want to know what happened to her. She must have been traumatized. Next story. Am I the a-hole for getting mad at my wife whenever she talks condescendingly about our son's work? So basically, my son is a professional aerial performer and is currently performing in this large and popular horror-themed circus where we live. I know I may be biased, but in my opinion, he's really good, and it's just amazing to watch him perform. Maybe a little scary sometimes, and sometimes I worry about him with some of the tricks and acts he does. My wife, however, will just tell people who works in the circus, never mentioning that he's an aerial performer, that he actually works independently and is basically a contractor, that he works with a very large and popular circus. Just that he works in the circus. Whenever we are out and she sees a clown, she will point at it and say, "Look, it's son's name." And it is very clear she looks down on him for what he does. She assumes he makes next to nothing and is poor. I know he's not. He doesn't make a crazy amount, but he makes enough to support himself well. This all came to a head when we were with some of her friends, and one of them asked if our son could entertain her kids at a birthday party, promising to pay him generously since he must be struggling. My wife laughed and responded with, "I'll see if it's free." I butted in saying, "You probably won't be able to since the birthday falls on a day when popular circus, which is where he works as a headline aerial act in, is fully booked because it's so close to the new year." Almost everyone there was shocked since all this info was new to them. My wife looked pissed and left. She sat in the car and texted me that she wants to leave. I stayed for about 20 minutes answering questions and showing them some videos. The woman who asked apologized, saying she was given the impression by my wife that our son was a struggling and failing cheap circus performer and wanted to help him. When I finally left and got in the car, my wife yelled at me, saying that I made her look like an idiot and a horrible mother in front of her friends. When we got home, she stormed out the car and locked herself in our bedroom crying loudly. She's been like this for almost an hour now, and I'm starting to feel awful and like an a-hole. I could have just left it alone. So am I the a-hole? Now for the comments. Not the a-hole. If telling the truth makes her look like a horrible mother, then she is one. Not the a-hole. You only told your friends your son's real occupation. Of course, it didn't align with her descriptions of him, because she deliberately deprecated his value and his profession. She talked about him contemptuously and denied his hard work and career achievements. When you reveal the truth, it exposed her as an incompatible parent at best, an abolitionist of his job and accomplishments at worst. Her friends must have been stunned when he told them the truth. It was foreseeable that she'll be upset. Who wouldn't be? She deals with the backlash of her actions now and is prone to face social repercussions and accompanying prejudices as well. But she caused it. For the record, there's nothing wrong with clowns or low-ladder circus workers as well. They're not deemed any less. She shouldn't have said those things, even if they were correct. Also, there's nothing wrong with entertaining kids at birthday parties. It's an equitable side gig, and he's made money. I hope you understand it, because it genuinely reads as you depict these workers as such, and you didn't bother to clarify otherwise. I'm so sorry if it came across like I thought that way. I absolutely agree. The circus wouldn't be complete without them. You didn't make her look like a terrible mother. She did that herself. I've been into music my whole life. Neither of my parents have ever supported me or stood up for me when someone made a stupid remark. Yes, who doesn't speak to them that often nowadays? Well, maybe she shouldn't act like a horrible mom, and general all-around a-hat. Not stay home. Not stay home. Your wife is really out of order. Seems like she has a big problem with her son not conforming to her standards of success, but her shaming and belittling him to others is disgusting. Aerial performers are amazing. It's a shame she's not proud of his skills or success. Last story. Am I the a-hole for asking my dad to pay me back money I gave him because he said I was only lucky in finding a job? I, 25 female, live with my parents and little brother, male 13. For backstory, I give my parents money monthly to help with rent plus bills. I often treat them all to nice restaurants when I get a bonus, and even buy groceries and snacks for everyone to use at home. I have never been very studious, and I barely managed a degree that I have no interest in. I did not enjoy the field and never looked for work in it. Instead, I wanted to explore my options and tried a bunch of different jobs, some that didn't always pay well. Even then, I still contributed to the house and managed my own expenses. I was always into video games and my parents had a problem with it since I can remember, saying that it's not a girly thing to do and it won't get me anywhere. Well, about a year ago, I got a job as a small copywriter for a video game-based page. It didn't pay well at first, but I worked very hard, got a promotion, and I'm now even in charge of sales and collaborations, where I make some decent money in commissions. The other day, my dad was talking to my brother, and I was passing by and overheard their conversation. My dad told him he must study hard and get a real profession, and not to be like me because I just got lucky in finding a job related to video games, and it's not real work. Here's where I might be the a-hole. A while ago, my parents needed some money in an emergency, so I gave it to them out of my savings. I even said it is okay, they don't need to pay it back. But after hearing my dad say I got to where I am because of luck, I walked up to him and said, "Remember the money I gave you guys? I'm going to need you to pay it back when you can. You see, who knows when my luck ran out, and I might need the money." My dad got mad and said I was an a-hole for being so petty over a small comment I made. when I know he doesn't have the money to pay me back. What do you think, guys? Am I the a-hole? Not an a-hole. Perhaps you should save the money you've been giving your parents and move out on your own. I live with them because they need help with the bills and stuff. I'm planning on moving out next year, though. If they don't respect the job you have and the money you make, it shouldn't be helping to pay their bills. I get wanting to help them, but if they're going to continue to bite the hand that feeds them, you'll only be reinforcing the behavior by staying. How is that your problem? I mean, what if your luck runs out and you wasted all that time and money helping your parents out when they don't even appreciate or respect you? Stop paying rent, save your money and move out. Your parents are the a-holes. I wish you could see the face I'm making right now. You have to help support them while they insult you? Make him pay you back. Not stay home. Whatever the amount was, take it out of your rent. There's another comment here to make sure you don't end up in a relationship where the person insults you while demanding you support them because you're used to it. And that's something you should be watchful over.
The a-hole for telling my aunt she ruined her own relationship with her son? My aunt is a mechanic who opened up her own business 30 years ago. She has one kid, my cousin Jake, 26, and he's always been her shadow when it came to the business. From the time he was young, he was in the shop with her, and he started working there full-time when he turned 18, and he was a hard worker. Doing so much to help keep everything working well, he balanced out my aunt's somewhat abrasive personality, and he made sure everything was where it was supposed to be. He worked the longest hours out of anyone. He wasn't the only person working there either. She hired me, 30 male, and another cousin too, and she has a few other guys on staff. It was always called the family business, and she said it was her legacy to pass down someday. One of the other guys who works for my aunt is Dylan, 30 male. For a few years now, my aunt has taken Dylan under her wing to teach him everything she knows and has treated him like a son. I know Jake was jealous of that and felt left out and insecure about his place in the business. It was very noticeable how my aunt was treating Dylan like the person who'd inherit the shop when she was ready to step down. I brought it up to her once and she told me to mind my own business. Jake carried on working his butt off, and his relationship with his mom grew more and more distant. In March, my aunt announced that when the time came for her to step down, she'd be leaving Dylan in charge and passing over ownership to him. Jake confronted her about the decision, and she told him it was a business decision and he'd still have a job no matter what. Jake told her that all that talk about legacy and it being a family business was BS and he quit. My aunt didn't expect it, but Jake hasn't been back since. Jake told me and our other cousin to stay and not give up on it, but he was going to find somewhere else since his mom had shown how little his effort meant to her. Jake and his mom haven't talked since that day, and he avoids her. She's starting to get all upset now because she doesn't have anyone to stay late and work if a client has a tight deadline. She doesn't have someone making sure everything's running smoothly. That was always Jake. And she's also realizing that he means business because he was so good to her. She mentioned how he hadn't called since that day and won't answer any of her calls. She tried to blame me and my other cousin, saying we ruined her relationship with Jake. She couldn't say how, but she blamed us anyway. I told her she ruined her own relationship with him and she needed to get the heck over herself and face it. I told her she always talked about the shop being her legacy, and she called it a family business, but then passed over her only kid for a random worker who she decided was more like her so deserved it. I told her she'd be lucky if Jake ever speaks to her again. My aunt told me blaming her and being cruel wasn't helping anyone. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. So, she's having sex with Dylan, isn't she? Not the a-hole. See, that's not how I looked at it. Not saying it's not possible, but I saw it as her claiming Dylan as the son she always wanted kind of thing. Reason being is that's how she treats him from what I've seen. Because as much as Jake adored her and was committed to the business, they were very different. OP, why don't you and your other cousin go to another workshop? It's obvious your aunt doesn't understand the meaning of loyalty or having a brain. Look, she knows what she did and blames you too for what happened. Why isn't Dylan staying late? It is his business after all. If I was Jake, I would never break no contact. Your aunt deserves everything she gets. She discarded her son for what she thought was a better model. Well, he wasn't, and the chickens have come home to roost. She's going to be very lonely. This post reminds me of a family member who worked at a daycare or preschool for years. She was the person who opened every morning and knew the operation inside and out. Owner sold the business, and new person brought in their own staff. That is understandable. However, they never appreciated my family member and treated her as if she was a brand new employee off the street. She was also someone who never called in sick. I think she called in twice in 5 years. This is a good trade for the person opening up a business at 6 a.m. every weekday, right? They treated her so bad that she quit. Within less than a month, she heard from folks still there and the parents that most days the place was opening late, sometimes as late as 6:30. Parents were pulling their kids and enrolling them elsewhere, and the owner was scrambling. My family member relished the karma. This made me think of the aunt in this post. She didn't appreciate Jake and what he did and took him for granted. Now that he's left, she is realizing how much he did. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not financially helping my mom after finding out a secret she kept from me for over 20 years? I, 28 male, just learned something that completely reversed my relationship with my mom, 54 female. I always thought we were close. She was a single parent who raised me on her own after my dad left us when I was just a baby. She told me he had nothing to do with us. We were not rich when I was a kid, and I've always had a lot of respect for what she did for us. I took money to pay for uni, worked part-time, and now that I have a decent job and some savings, I've been helping her every now and then with groceries, bills, and such. Anyways, a few weeks ago, I got a message on my very active Facebook from a man who I didn't know. First, I thought it was a joke or scam or something when it read, "I think I could be your dad," but he sent me photos of him and my mom when they were younger. My resemblance to him was close too. I confronted my mom, to which she started to cry and admitted that, yes, he was actually my father. She never told him she was pregnant, so he left. He had no idea that I existed at all, until recently when he probably saw my baby pics on Facebook or our old mutual friend statuses put together. I don't know if or when to meet him though. He seems nice, stable, and I assume married with kids. Our text messages were quite long and detailed, and personal, hence excluded them from this post. He says how he would have been there, would have raised me. I get emotional thinking about it in my head, but this is where the conflict starts. My mom just got fired prior to my dad messaging me. She asked if I could help pay her rent for a few months, and I said no. I told her I needed space. I mean, it's a lot to take in when your own mother had just been lying to you for your entire life and kept me from a father who loved me. Obviously, no mother is perfect, but I felt cheated. Okay, she was young and maybe in over her head, but she stole a relationship with my dad from me. How can she expect my help like nothing has happened? I'm not cutting her off forever though. Just don't think I owe her money now, especially not when I still need to try and make sense of it all. Trust takes years to build, seconds to break, and forever to repair. Take the time you need. Thank you sums it up perfectly. I think it hurts that I did trust her completely. Not the a-hole. Those are the worst kind of betrayals. I can't imagine why she made that choice. Unless the guy was abusive, no indication he was, she made her life harder, and OP's immeasurably different. All that time she stole from them. Why? Not the a-hole. You definitely deserve time and space to process all of this. Aside from denying you a right to have a dad in your childhood and life, her secret also kept medical history from you that could have had a huge impact on your life. She also deprived your dad of knowing he had a child for nearly 3 decades. Exactly. It's not just about emotions, but also facts that shaped my life without me even knowing. From what you've written, though, give her more time to explain herself as well. She went through this alone for a reason. There's a reason she didn't tell him. It might be a better reason than you think, and she now has to juggle whether to double down and tell you or let it pass. Really good point. It would have been hard for her to open up about it. I hope when that time comes, she's willing to really talk about it honestly. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my dad it's easy to see which wife he actually loved when he complained about people setting him up after the death of his second wife? My dad was married twice, one to mine and my brother's, 29 and 30 male's mom, and the second time to our half-sibling's mom, 19 female and 20 male. Mine and my brother's mom died when we were 7 and 8, and he remarried a little over a year later. Dad started dating his second wife 6 months after mom died, and he'd been on dates with other women before he met his second wife. We met a couple of those dates. My dad's second wife died 2 years ago, and Dad has not dated at all since, and some of his family and friends have tried to set him up with women. It ticked him off, and he ranted at them about how insensitive it is to him when he lost his wife recently, and how could anyone expect him to move on that fast. My brother told him he didn't have that problem when mom died, and he stormed off telling Dad to go F himself. Dad hadn't expected my brother to say that kind of thing, and he was angry at the people who tried to set him up. After all that went down, he tried to talk to me about it, and he was whining about people thinking he could move on, and how she was barely cold in the ground. I told him it was so easy to see which wife he actually loved with that attitude. I told him he was dating 5 months after mom died. 5. I said he was talking to the kids whose mom was so easy for him to move on from, to the kids who had to freaking deal with it when he remarried after just more than a year. I said if he wanted to get sympathy, he should go to our half-siblings, since it's their mom he's so in love with that he couldn't move on from her. Dad told me it wasn't like that, and my brother and I needed to look at it differently. I told him if he was in our shoes, he wouldn't be saying that. Then he got mad because I didn't apologize or say I didn't mean it, and because my brother told him to F himself again when he tried calling him to talk about it. He said we have no right to judge him or decide his feelings. Am I the a-hole? Now for the comments. Not the a-hole. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that this isn't the first time you felt that your dad didn't give as much importance to your mom's life as you would have liked or supported you and your brother's grief. You would be right about that, but this is where he just seemed insensitive toward us with it. You know, that makes me mad. Not the a-hole, but I'm with your brother and you that your dad sure is. Was he in such a hurry to get married the first time because he wanted a woman to raise his young children, and now he doesn't need to? Anyway, not the a-hole. 100% this is the right answer. He spent 6 months dealing with 2 young children and their grief all by himself and realized he couldn't do it. He needed to find a replacement ASAP. Now the half-siblings are old enough to not rely on him heavily in that way, so the need for a replacement isn't pressing. His driving motivation has always been himself and what he needs. OP is not the a-hole, but his dad sure is. This right here, according to kids' ages, Dad might have still been in his 20s when he was widowed. Also, the first wife being roughly the same age is a tragic death. Accident, disease, whatever. She was a young mom who died, so there's that aspect of it all too. Men, most of the time, find a replacement fast. That's just a fact. The younger the widower, the faster the replacement, particularly with small children. Last story. Am I the a-hole for blowing up at my parents for something my adult sister did? I, 26 female, have a sister, Amy, 28 female, who has always had a difficult relationship with food. She was bullied as a kid and turned to food for comfort. As an adult, she still struggles with self-control, especially around things she finds appetizing. Our parents have never set boundaries with her around food, and that's carried into adulthood. She currently lives with them, and they do all the grocery shopping and cooking. My husband, 28 male, recently had a birthday, and I planned a surprise party. I sent him out of the house for a few hours so I could set up and asked my parents to come help. I specifically asked them not to bring Amy. Setting up involved putting out snacks, drinks, and a homemade cake with frosting. They showed up with Amy anyway, saying it wouldn't be fair to exclude her. I gave her a few small tasks and specifically asked her not to touch any of the food until guests arrived, but I was too busy to keep a constant eye on her. At one point, I went into the kitchen and found Amy with the fridge open, eating the frosting out of the mixing bowl. She had eaten nearly half of it. As soon as she saw me, she burst into tears and said she only meant to try a little but couldn't stop. My parents heard us and came in. My mom said it wasn't that big of a deal since the cake was untouched, and I still had enough frosting for a crumb coat, but I had planned to do specific cake decorations, and now there wasn't enough frosting. I didn't have the time or ingredients to make more. My dad suggested going to the store to buy a tub of pre-made frosting, saying it was the same thing. I explained my husband tries to avoid a lot of the ingredients found in store-bought frosting and wouldn't want that. My dad said to just not tell him, since he wouldn't even know the difference. That suggestion was super frustrating to me. I told my parents that they couldn't convince me that this was no big deal, and that they had allowed this by not setting boundaries with Amy's binge eating and by bringing her to set up. They told me to back off and be more sensitive to my sister, and that it wasn't her fault. I responded by saying that I was angrier at them because at least Amy felt bad while they were trying to downplay the situation. They got upset and said it wasn't fair to blame them for Amy's choices, and that she was an adult and they can't control her. They also said that they were trying to help by giving suggestions, and that I was being stubborn by shutting all of them down. They ended up leaving, and now they're giving me the silent treatment, even though Amy has apologized for eating the frosting. Am I the a-hole for involving them in this? Not the a-hole. You knew this could be a problem. You asked your parents to leave Amy at home. Your parents refused. You asked them to keep her out of the kitchen. They refused. Amy ruined your plans for the cake, and your parents gave unhelpful suggestions. And they're mad because you were right? Because you spoke up? Nope. It's easier to forgive someone for being wrong than it is to forgive them for being right. Got to love how they tried to guilt OP by saying, "Don't blame Amy." And then when OP goes, "I'm not, I'm blaming you," they turn around and blame Amy. Not the a-hole. Because you requested that they not bring her to help set up, and they did. When they brought her, one of them should have stayed with her. That being said, Amy's now 28 and aware of her problem. She has to own that. If she's not in therapy, that's something that she needs to be in. She should have declined coming if she thought she wouldn't be able to control herself. Seriously, the way Amy is being discussed both in the post and in the comment, it's like she's mentally disabled or something. She's a 28-year-old fully grown adult. Yes, she obviously has a mental illness, but she is 100% responsible for her own actions. This is her fault. This isn't OP's parents' fault. This is Amy's fault. Amy messed up. Amy made a choice to destroy her brother-in-law's birthday cake. This is why I like that phrase, "Your mental illness isn't your fault, but it is your responsibility." Amy is an adult and is responsible for her own well-being, and she needs to get therapy. I do think the parents are somewhat at fault, though, for how they have handled it all these years, and how they are still handling it. But ultimately, Amy needs to put in the work for her own healing and hold herself accountable. Am I the a-hole for telling my family to get someone other than the family screw-up, me, to babysit since I'll never be good for anything? I, 17 male, am the family screw-up if you ask anyone in my family, including my parents, my siblings, and their spouses. They've always seen me that way, and I am clumsy and struggle with coordination, etc. But 3 years ago, we found out why when I was diagnosed with dyspraxia. Suddenly, all the struggles I had made sense, but my parents made it into the biggest negative because they saw it as confirmation that I'd never go anywhere in life. The guys in our family are all physically active and work in construction. That's expected for all the men. I always knew that could never be me, and they always thought, until my diagnosis, that they could shame me into doing better. Once my diagnosis was official, they didn't see me as being worth the effort anymore. Every time I hurt myself as a kid, they were on me for not paying attention or not listening. When school sent home emails and notes saying that my handwriting was awful, or that I couldn't follow certain instructions well, or when I got hurt at school using scissors or something, they were always so angry. They'd punish me and tell me I needed to do better. If I said I tried my best, they didn't believe me. They'd say all you had to do was see the mess that I wrote or drew or cut out. I was 7 or 8 when someone first suggested I might have dyspraxia, and my parents rejected the idea and said I was just being careless. They kept getting angry about the mistakes I'd make or my lack of coordination. My siblings loved to make fun of me for that stuff too. I also had problems with speech sometimes, and that was another thing my parents accused me of being too lazy to get right, and my siblings would mock me relentlessly for it. More than once, I was told I'd never be good at anything or good for anything. I was told nobody would trust me to tell them the time because I'd find a way to mess it up. My siblings loved calling me the family screw-up, and they said I embarrassed everyone, that even our grandparents wanted as little as possible to do with me. Oh, and when I got my diagnosis, they said I was too stupid to walk in a straight line or use scissors, and that I should change my name to Ralph Wiggum. In the last few years, my parents have become grandparents to 6 kids. Now that some of them are a little older and my siblings with kids miss being able to go out with their spouses on weekends, they want a babysitter. Even for family get-togethers, they'd like someone to babysit. Everyone said that since I was the youngest, I could do it. But that ticked me off, and I said no. They didn't expect it and told me it wasn't my decision, and I said it isn't theirs either. I said to get someone other than the family screw-up to babysit since I could never be good for anything. My parents told me I was being given a chance to prove myself and I should take it if I believe I'm capable of being more than a burden. I said they were out of luck because I'm just too Ralph Wiggum for that. My parents didn't get it. My siblings were like, "You can't take a joke." Everyone's mad, but I think they're all a little too afraid to force the babysitting now. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. They have never been there for you or supported you in any capacity. You don't owe them anything. They aren't family. They are monsters. Focus your time on saving money and getting the heck away from them. You're right. Nobody in my family ever tried supporting me. My parents actually refused to support me by getting me tested sooner. People suggested it, and they were always so against it, until a teacher pushed before I went to high school. Obviously, you can't be trusted to walk and chew gum. Why would they think you can babysit? Especially for free. I mean, ER visits are expensive. How are you supposed to afford them if you're not getting paid? Not the a-hole. Oh, and ask your school about occupation or vocational rehab training. They can probably get you into a career other than construction. I'm trying to get my grades for certain classes good enough to get into video game stuff. I love games and I work pretty well with computers, so I'm hoping and my teachers are hopeful I can do it. I hope you know you're not the a-hole, and by what you've said here, I believe you have a great future in front of you. I'm going to laugh my butt off when you're more successful than all your siblings, and they can't figure out why you won't help them out financially 10 years down the road. Keep doing what you're doing, OP. I have faith in you. Next story. Am I the a-hole for saying I'd end a relationship if my kid didn't like my partner's kid when my brother asked me what I'd do in his shoes? My brother is a single dad with a 9-year-old son. My nephew's mom is not in the picture. For the last 3 years, my brother has been dating Kayla, and for the last 2 years, my brother and Kayla have introduced their sons. Her son is also 9 to each other, and they spend time as a group. The boys do not like each other, and my brother has told me that both of them complain and try to get out of spending time together. The first time they met was at a kids' play center, and within 10 minutes, the boys were playing with different groups of kids. The second time, they went to see a movie, and Kayla's son moved seats to sit next to his friend. The third time, my nephew went to listen to a different story time, but in the same library, obviously. Other times, they brought them to the amusement park 20 minutes from my brother's house, and they chose to go on different rides from each other. And when they went on the same one, they chose to be in different rows or carts. When they've spent time at each other's houses, they do their own thing. When they play games together, they want to partner with their parents and not each other. And when they were forced to, it ended in them fighting and refusing to play. They have attended each other's birthday parties, and there were no interactions beyond forced ones. My brother and Kayla tried to plan sleepovers, and were left with 2 kids who did not want to hang out with each other. If they can avoid it, they won't sit next to or across from each other at meals. My brother and Kayla wanted to move in together and get married, but the boys are still avoiding each other and not getting along. Both say they don't like the other, and I'm not sure if reasons were asked or given, but neither of them was okay with the idea of the four living together. My brother said Kayla wants to try living together and making it work, but he's not sure, and he's worried he could lose my nephew to the decision eventually, or that it will hurt their relationship. He asked me what I'd do, and I said I would end a relationship if my kid and their kid could not get along. I said sibling fighting is normal, but these boys aren't siblings yet, and when there are no good moments, or moments where they want to or are okay with being around each other, it seems like a recipe for disaster. Our mom told me not to discourage my brother, and that things like this can be worked on. She told me when my brother left that I should have just supported him. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. He was asking how you would handle it. You're giving your feelings on the matter after he asked for them. I don't know if it would help anything at this point, but have they considered family counseling? With the state of their various relationships, they should go see a professional before making major decisions and changes. Kayla suggested it, but my brother wasn't so sure since they don't even live together, and because they lack the good times for him to really think there's anything to work on. Not the a-hole. Truly, if he listens to you, he might save his relationship with his son, because another partner can be found. But another son? Exactly. I know there are people who treat their kids like they're easy to replace. Deadbeats who start whole new families come to mind. But in reality, I could not damage my relationship with my kids for a romantic relationship. Kids aren't side characters in your love life. They're your responsibility. If you're picking romance over your own child, you've already failed the most important job. Unfortunately, there are people out there who treat them as secondary or less important, and some have the nerve to be upset when they lose their relationship with them. Is there a way that you or your brother could sit down with your nephew and just talk to him? Find out why he may not like the other boy? 9-year-olds can be pretty articulate. There may be things like the other kid is a bully, takes toys, talks badly to him, hits him, etc., and he may not want anything to do with him. But these may be things that the parents don't see or hear. I'd give the son a voice, since he'll have to live with this other kid for another 9 years if their parents move in together. If something like violence is going on, your brother needs to know. I think that would make the decision pretty clear. My brother already has. I don't know if he asked about why or what my nephew said if that was asked, but the conversation did take place. That was part of what was making my brother really consider whether this relationship should continue. Next story. Am I the a-hole for preventing my pregnant sister access to my food? My sister, 31 female, is staying with me temporarily after leaving her husband. I, 29 male, have a small apartment, but I let her move in because she had nowhere else to go and she's 6 months pregnant. I wasn't very pleased about this situation, but she is my sis after all. The main issue has been food. I'm pretty disciplined about what I eat because I am in bulk stage and hitting the gym regularly. I portion things, label them, and plan for the entire week. But every other day something's gone. Makes me crazy. She'll drink all my expensive shakes, polish off meals I've prepped for work, eat snacks I've saved for post-run, and even finish leftovers I was planning to turn into new meals. When I bring it up, she shrugs and says things like, cravings hit hard, or hormones, or you are being mean. I asked her to replace things she finishes, or at least ask before taking something. Or heck, manage her own food for God's sake. She refuses to do anything about it. So last week I ordered a small mini fridge and set it up in my bedroom. It's just big enough for my meal prep, snacks, and drinks. I didn't make a scene about it. I just quietly started putting all my stuff there. She noticed 2 days later and got mad. She said I was being childish, dramatic, and treating her like a thief. I calmly told her I was tired of my groceries disappearing and that this was the easiest way to avoid fights. Now she's sulking and has told our parents that after her failed marriage, her brother is also alienating her, and she is just a burden for everyone. My mom called and said pregnancy isn't easy, and especially for her situation. I don't think I'm being cruel. I'm still letting her live here rent-free, and I've even offered to order food or cook together. but I just want my food to be left alone. A part of me understands she's going through trouble, but at my expense? Am I the a-hole? Now for the comments. She sounds dreadful. Of course she ought to realize that she's taking your carefully planned meals. She's being mean. I have been pregnant and have several children, and I never got cravings or blamed anything on hormones or pregnancy. She's clearly just buying in on this "I'm super special because I'm pregnant" BS. She's old enough and mature enough to get her act together. Having a baby doesn't make you a princess. I had whacked out cravings when I was pregnant and would literally throw up if I tried to eat something other than what I was craving. It was an absolute nightmare. You know what I still never did? Steal anyone's pre-prepped food or leftovers. Even when I was on bed rest for 3 months, I either had food delivered or placed a grocery pickup for my husband to grab on his way home from work. Stealing someone's food after they've asked you to not is just plain selfish and inconsiderate and has nothing to do with having a baby. Not the a-hole. You're treating her like a thief because she's acting like one. Cravings can be rough, but they don't completely take away your control. She's choosing to eat your food. If your mom thinks her actions are fine, tell her your sister can live with her. 100%. Also, if she doesn't go someplace else soon, you will have her in your small apartment and a newborn. She's a big girl and it's time to act like one. She needs a plan. If she doesn't have one, she needs to move back in with your parents. Hopefully they have more space and are willing to feed her. Not the a-hole. She's having a baby in 3 months. What's her plan? Are you supposed to be changing diapers and feeding everyone? She needs to move in with your parents. Last story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to pick up a friend at the airport because she booked a flight that arrived at 3 a.m.? So this last week, I had agreed to pick up a friend/neighbor at the airport around 10 p.m. She has physical restrictions and does not drive. She also maxes out her luggage, even though she was only going back to Philly for 2 weeks. She always has 2 large checked bags, as close to the 50-pound max limit as possible, and 3 carry-on bags. She likes to stay up late, so she always books the latest flight to arrive back in town. In hindsight, I also realized that there are lots of crazy drivers around the airport in Vegas at night. The last 3 times I have gone to the airport, I have almost gotten into accidents, with drivers cutting me off when heading there. So this last Tuesday, she was set to return at 9:50 p.m. From the time she lands, it usually takes her close to an hour to get her bags and get to the pickup area. So we're talking 10:50 p.m. before she's ready. I asked her to text me when the flight took off so I would know it was on time. She texted me that the flight was delayed and it sat on the ground for at least 2 hours. Finally, around 1 a.m. Philly time, she told me the flight was canceled due to weather. She said they got off and there was a long line to reschedule flights, but there was also an app she could use. I told her that I didn't want to be driving to the airport after 10 p.m. to pick her up. There were a few flights much earlier than her current one. She texted me back that she had rebooked for a 9:20 departure and arrival at 11:50 p.m. I reminded her that I didn't want to be driving after 10 p.m. and that it would take her an hour to get out of baggage claim. She told me her bags were already sent and she might be out around 12:30 a.m. instead. I told her I would not be coming out at 12:30 a.m. to pick her up. As it turns out, her flight was delayed again and left at 1 a.m. Philly time, arriving at 3 a.m. local time. I told her to call an Uber and that she needed a credit card to set up an account. Her reply was, "I didn't bring a credit card with me." Who does that? So does that make me an a-hole for not agreeing to pick someone up at 3 a.m. instead of 9:50 p.m.? Not the a-hole. Don't give her rides anymore, no matter what time. It wasn't until after I agreed to pick her up that I realized how many crazy drivers there were around the airport at night. It doesn't matter how many crazy drivers there are. I'm the nicest person ever. I've done airport drop-offs/pickups at 6 a.m. and 10 p.m., but I would not do 3 a.m. There are limits and there are boundaries. If she can afford to fly with all those bags, then she can afford the taxi. That's the reality of it. I would no longer be offering rides to this person. If you are visiting someone and they are picking you up at the airport, it is courteous to get a flight that lands at a reasonable time. I would never pick a flight that lands at 10 p.m. unless that is my only option. Sometimes that's how it shakes out when you travel internationally. But last time I landed at late night for an international flight, I took a taxi to my friend's place. Not the a-hole. She can get an Uber/Lyft/taxi. She seems really entitled and ungrateful and manipulative. Especially in Las Vegas, where the airport is perfectly central and not way out in the exurbs. You can Uber from the airport to anywhere in the Las Vegas Valley for an acceptable amount. Traveling without a credit card seems unlikely. Uber was the way to go, and she should have figured that out. She can always use Apple Cash. Sounds like she just didn't want to pay it. Yeah, when was the last time you went to a normal hotel and booked with cash and no card? When was the last time you traveled by air without a card? I bet she doesn't reimburse for gas. She's just cheap and entitled.